Welcome to the 100th episode of the One Gang Worldwide podcast. Today's a special one. To celebrate hitting triple digits, we brought back three incredible past guests: off-road legend Scot Harden, industry veteran Robin Hartfiel, and brand building powerhouse Eric Anderson, whose episode will be released next week. We're talking racing, media, business, and the future of motorcycling. Thanks to all of you for riding with us through 100 episodes. Let's get into it.
And I'm right to the right of Pablo Escobar at the finish line of the 1979 Baja 500.
That is so awesome.
Welcome to the One Gang Worldwide podcast, your ultimate ride into the world of motorcycles. Visit cyclesworldwide.com, where we offer a completely free marketplace for everything motorcycles. Join our One Gang community where you can connect, share info, and swap stories with riders from all over the world. Join for free at cyclesworldwide.com and be a part of the One Gang community right now.
Welcome to the One Gang Worldwide podcast. This is a 100th show episode, man. Crazy how time flies. Woo-hoo! And we brought three legends from the industry and friends of ours who we love and respect very much. They were gracious enough to give us their time. We're going to have some fun. We're going to talk about some of the crazy days in their meetings through the years of this industry. And then we'll kind of get into more of what's happening in the industry, actually, from people who live and breathe this every day. So Robin, Eric, Scott, welcome to the show, guys. So awesome to see all three of you again.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, here.
Pumped to have you.
There we go.
First phone
Perfect.
call.
First phone call today. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Well, we're going to start with a break the ice section. So we've got 10 rapid fire questions for each of you guys. So we'll start with the first one. You guys ready?
All right.
Pressure's on.
All right. What's the weirdest or wildest thing you've ever signed or seen someone sign at an industry or race event? Scott, we'll start with you.
Gosh.
The best story gets the collector's trophy of the day.
Well, you know,
women's
obviously, I've seen a lot of body parts signed, female body parts signed.
Okay, that's a good one.
Yep. I'll just leave it at that. You know, I've seen, parts, just a weird part off of a bike that somebody brought.
That's cool.
I've seen, and I don't know that it's weird. I'd also say that I've seen people bring things, memorabilia, a photo that they had when they were a kid with one of their legends, and they've got a chance to full circle it and be there with them as an adult and get them to sign that photo, and hear them tell them what an inspiration that person was in their life. I don't know if that's gaslight is weird, but definitely
No,
different.
that's good. What about you, Eric?
I think that helmet up here, which belonged to Scot Harden in 2004, that one's autographed by Scot Harden right there. That's an old Red Bull Dakar helmet. So that'd be my nomination.
All right. Robin, you?
It goes to weird but poignant. There was a dealer in San Pedro, Wild Bill, and Wild Bill was interned in a gas tank of one of his old bikes. And that gas tank sat on the counter at San Pedro Cycles for years. And nobody knew that he never left the store. He was there long after he was gone. And then finally, the story got out and people would sign the tank and their best wishes to Wild Bill in the afterlife. So
that's crazy.
I mean, that was crazy, but it was also really powerful.
Oh my gosh. That is cool. Super cool.
Robin
Second best thing is the John Penton signing my gas tank on my Penton. But he signed it with a grease pencil. And so over the years, the signature disappeared. It couldn't touch it, couldn't wash it, couldn't dust it even because it would take it. But eventually just the ultraviolet from the light, there's no more signature.
Man.
So I got to get it
re-signed. There's some way to restore that. Maybe there's some way.
Clear coated at the time, but
hey, I got a better idea. Robin, they're having his 100th birthday in his hometown. Yeah, the whole town's coming out for a celebration in 2 weeks.
Man,
you can check that gas tank for luggage. Yeah,
I will do that.
I think August 15th. It's on a Wednesday, I think. There you go.
Nice. The advantages of having more than a couple voices in one show. That's killer. All right, here's a fun one. And we'll go Robin, Eric, Scott. So, Robin, if your career was a motorcycle, what make and model would it be and why?
Well, from my Hector Catamotori illustration and to our earlier talks about the infamous Sachs gearbox with its 6 neutrals, I would be my Penton 6-day steel tanker.
Right on.
Cool.
Solid. Eric, what about you?
Oh man, I'd probably have to say something really strange like an ATK 604 or something. They were fast for their day, but they're real small production numbers. They made a little bit of a difference, but they never lasted too long. They flamed out.
Gotcha.
But I keep coming back, and I still like those old bikes.
I was going to say you didn't flame out.
No, I didn't. I kept coming back, but
Gotcha.
ATK did, and it was one of my favorite motorcycles. It was innovative for its time. I love the whole anti-torque reaction device that was on it, and I knew Horst Leitner, so I kind of followed him on, even though he was cranky old curmudgeonly guy, but I loved him still because he took on the big four. He's the little guy that really thumped his chest really loudly, and I was always a fan of the little guy, and in many ways,
Yeah.
Horst Leitner was a bit of a mentor to me. He was an inventor. He was creative. He went outside the industry and made tons of money with his AMP. He does the bed liner or the bed extensions on the tailgates of pickup trucks for all the OEMs, plus those the side steps on trucks that drop down when you open the doors. He created all of that, sold it to the OEMs in the automotive business. So he is one of the few guys that left the power sports and motorcycle industry and made it big, or much bigger than he did here. But ATK still has a place in my heart.
Right on. All right, no pressure, Scott, but we got a couple of good answers so far. What about you?
Yeah. So, for me, it probably have to be some Husqvarna model, that I raced or rode, or when I was at AMA VMD on a table, they had 4 cases, 4 different engine types. And I looked at them and I realized I was looking at my life. There was a 73 CR250, my first Husqvarna I ever owned, my first desert race I ever won overall on it. There was a 74 400 set of cases. I won more desert races on that, and Barstow to Vegas and everything. And then there were 77, 78, 79 Husqvarna motors there, and they were all just the cases, and it was every Baja 1000, my first Baja 1000, my first Baja 500, my first Parker 400, my first overall, and all these big race score championships were all in that engine. And then there was a 1980 case laying there, and that was my first 6 days and my first Las Vegas 400 overall win. And I looked at those 4 cases sitting there and I go, God, that's my life, or in those things. These were the power plants that were at the core of the motorcycles that powered my dream, and I was just like, whoa. And somebody had written on it the years and the models. And then when I started thinking about it, so it would have to be a Husqvarna, but it would be a amalgamation of all of those things all rolled into one. But if it had to be one bike, it'd be a 74 Bank 250 Husky, because that was the bike that changed my life. It was my first support bike. I think they weighed 180 pounds wet, Eric. I mean, remember when the Mag 250 came out? It was revolutionary. The 73 Husky they'd gone the wrong direction. The motor was big, the bike was heavy, and then they corrected all that in 74. And wow, what a machine, so.
Man.
All right, cool.
That's killer. Next question. We'll go Scott, Eric, and Robin. What was your go-to lunch place during the early days in the industry, and is that spot still around?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so there was this little greasy dive across the ditch from Husqvarna Motors USA down in San Diego, on Claremont, on Mercury Street.
Mercury, been there, yeah. Blackwell was there too in those days.
Well, that's who I was working with, Mark
and
Blackwell.
Nils Arne Nilsson, yeah, those guys.
Awesome. And Nils Arne had gone, but I was there with them and Boppo Peel, who I saw this weekend, and Mark Dodd, who I worked there with, who I saw this weekend. Anyway, there's a little ditch across. Ellie's Deli was the name of the place. Gotta know where that just came back. He was some Iranian guy, and he was a hothead. It was just like the no soup guy.
Right.
The
I
He
know
soup
was
soup
the
for
no
you?
soup guy before there was a no soup guy.
That's so
And
funny.
but we used to go in there, and I had many a meal with Mark Blackwell over there, and some of the other guys. So Ellie's Deli, Mercury
right.
That's
Street,
cool.
San Diego.
That's cool. All right, Eric. A
Now,
funny aside, real quick. Our go-to lunch spot as a family is Ellie's Deli, but here in Stuart, Florida.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a franchise.
No, I don't think so.
I doubt it.
All right,
You
sorry
guys
to
just
interrupt, Eric.
you're both attracted to Ellie's. That's it. Well, I
That's
have a
it.
really short answer. Lunch is for wimps. I was always grinding away at that stone, and I had a bag lunch. I always rode a motorcycle to work. That's why I've got over 1,000,000 miles under my butt, and I always carried just a bag lunch. So we would go out occasionally to some Aguilar's taco shop once in a while, and in the 18 years that I worked for Intersport Fashions West, and brought in Heingericka first gear, and then we did all the private label OEM clothing and Schuberth helmets and Held gloves and TCX boots and a lot of brands you may not have heard of, but we didn't have time for lunch. We just bagged it.
You're grinding. Robin, what about you, buddy?
There was when Advanced Star moved the operations. We started at 1700 Dyer, which Larry Hester, the founder of Dealernews, had launched. Had our own building. He was our even though he was our founder, he was still our landlord. Long after he'd got out of the motorcycle game, he was still calling the shots because we owed him rent every month. And we then Advanced Star bought the company, moved us to this giant tower, brand new building, and all that. But in the shadow of the tower was again a little Mexican place, Little Onion, and
Oh yeah.
that was
Little
the
Onion.
go-to spot for the next 13 years. After that move was just Little Onion. A lot of business, a lot of good memories, and I still go back there once in a blue moon just because it's still in business.
That's
I
awesome.
met you a lot. Like in 1991, we went to Little Onion for the first time, and that's when my column "Confessions of a Customer" was created. And
No
for
way.
Dealer News magazine, I still submitted my article yesterday, so I'm still doing it.
Hey, along those lines, Eric, I've got to say that is probably one of the longest running columns in the history of this
It's gotta
industry.
be.
Yeah, man.
How many of those have you written? Do you have any idea? I wanted to ask you about that because I saw it the other day. I was just so
Great
impressed. I go,
question.
how does he keep cranking these things out? How many have you
He's
written?
gotta look.
37 times 12 is 444.
Damn.
Jeez.
Yeah, so this is 100 episodes of One Gang, but you still got a ways to catch up to
Yeah,
Confessions
yeah.
of a Customer.
We're trying.
No,
We're trying.
but Harden, like that ATK that I selected as my favorite motorcycle. It's because I realized early that I'm not a great motocrosser. I was just really an intermediate. And then I tried one of these endurance things. I tried an enduro. Like, oh, I can last. I'm a Clydesdale, by the way. I'm over 200 pounds, and when I race triathlons, I'm in the Clydesdale class, and in the motorcycle class, I'm over 210 pounds. So I'm a big guy. My wife says when I'm reincarnated, I'm coming back as a Clydesdale horse, and I'm gonna pull beer wagons for the rest of my life. Scott, I know you know a lot about that, Scott, but I found out that I'm an endurance guy. I'm not a 40-minute motocross back in those days, or 3 20-minute motocrosses. Like, okay, this isn't long enough. I need something that's going to be all day, and it was people like Chris Haynes and Mark Blackwell that kind of egged me on. I finally bought a Husky 390 and started racing desert, and then we went to Baja and wah, the cherubs
Yeah.
sing, and now I know what distance racing is all about. I'm going for the 1,000 and the 500 and the 250, and I was never fast as Scott. Those guys are gone in the dust, but we executives from the MIC at the time, we were happy to finish fourth or fifth in class 22. We were stoked if we could.
That's
I
something
like
to
the
scoff
endurance
at.
stuff.
Heck yeah. All right. We got the lunch spots. Next question. We'll go Eric, Scott, and Robin. Eric, you're forced to go back to a beginner bike. What are you grabbing first? Could be from any era.
A beginner bike. Well, this is actually
Scott's
true.
gears are turning.
On the other side of this wall are two 1971 Taco ST100 mini bikes.
Sweet.
So
Sweet.
like I found these separately on Craigslist and one on Facebook Marketplace, and I bought them, and I'm restoring these. I used to have a Taco 44. That was like my first mini bike, and basically they have crude suspension front and back and a Briggs and Stratton pull start rope coil motor. These are a little bit bigger wheels, but they're still from 1971 and crude as hell. But I'm pimping
They're
one
both
out
1971.
1971, and I've got more modern motors and
That's
brakes
a great
on them.
year.
But I put a leading link front end on one of them. It's still not quite running yet, but I pimped it out with, let's see, it's Razzle Dazzle Pink. No, pink and purple. You know what plum crazy is from the Dodge era?
Yeah, that's a beautiful
metal,
color.
Metal flake purple with razzle dazzle clear coat over it. It's total pimp job. It's awesome.
Nice.
Yes.
And then I'm chroming the handlebars and doing all that. But yeah, I would go back. I'd love to ride mini bikes because that was when I first had wind in my face, and I realized that this is different than a go-kart. You got to put body motion into this and body English and change your weight, and all this is way more fun than a go-kart. And
Agreed.
I was sold ever since that mini bike. Who's next?
Tacos are sweet.
Well, my first mini bike that I ever had was a Taco 22. And that was the first mechanized thing that was my own that I got to ride everything and learn on. So I lusted after the Taco 44s because the Taco 22 was 2.5 horsepower. The 44 was 5 horsepower. And the 44s actually had some suspension.
Rear shocks.
Some of them. Yeah, the Taco 22s didn't. So I think for me, when I was a teenager and when On Any Sunday came out, I had a Suzuki TS 125 Duster, powder blue, beautiful bike. And it was my first race bike. And, I used it for transportation to get around town on. I had a driver's license, I was 14, 15 years old, 1971, 70. I should say, and I love that bike. I saw them at some restored ones at AMA Vintage Motorcycle Days, and they were immaculate. I made the mistake of asking them what it was worth because I was thinking about buying it. And the guy said, "Oh, it's worth 15." And I go, "Oh wow, $1,500. That would be pretty good." He goes, "No, 15,000."
You mean for something like that? 15,000 bucks?
No. A TS 125
TS, the Suzuki.
Yeah.
There's a whole group that are restoring those Suzukis, Eric, Robin, that from that era, the early 70s, and I lust after those things. I love the way the Duster looked, that powder blue. So for me, it was a TS 125 Duster.
All right, Robin, you?
Two seminal bikes, the CT70. I did have one of the Briggs and Stratton pull start and stuff, but the CT70 was so much better than that, and it started every time, and it ran for years with absolute abuse. That was it. I mean, I would get home from school and just pound laps on that thing all afternoon. And I burned out the headlight. I'd still ride until I couldn't see in pitch black.
Man.
I wouldn't do chores. I wouldn't do anything, but my allowance money went into, I had an old paint thinner can and I could get a gallon of gas a month. And I would run until I was out of gas, and then I would do my chores again to get another gallon of gas. That's that. And then when I went away, all through high school, my Triumph never worked, but my XL 175 never failed me. And all through 4 years of college, and then my cousin took it and it ran for him for 10 years, and it's still out there on the road somewhere. And I love that bike. And not quite the same powder blue as Scott's Duster, but it was this unique shade of blue. And I had a matching helmet that was blue. And I love that bike.
Hey, Robin, you see what those CT70s restored are bringing?
I see that, and I see there's the Chinese knockoffs.
Money.
I wouldn't do it to a real one, but I would get one of the knockoffs and run the crap out of that again.
Yeah, run the crap out of it.
Nice. Robin, this next question will start with you, then we'll go Scott and Eric. What's one piece of gear or tech you secretly think has been totally overhyped?
Overhyped.
Ooh.
Overhyped, yeah.
I still work in
Over.
this business. You're gonna just get me in
It's
trouble with
incriminating.
somebody.
We'll bleep it out like a swear word.
Yeah. Boy. Well, or we could make fun of one of the exhaust companies that's defunct and all of those things that
Yeah,
Yeah,
whenever,
right.
whenever you
15
guys feel
horsepower
comfortable.
Or an audio company.
yeah. Well,
Oh,
boy,
loud pipes save lives has been overhyped. How about that, Robin?
that is safer. Yes, I can say that. Wait, what? Speak up.
Yeah.
Actually, I am. Well, I'm hard of hearing in both ears, but one ear is because of all those open pipes on all of those early two strokes just screaming away and no ear protection, no nothing, and didn't give it a second thought and still would do it all over again.
Absolutely.
All right,
Yeah.
Scott, let's hear yours.
Well, this is a hard one. Remember, I still got a lot of sponsors that make these products.
This is an incriminating question.
that help
It is
me
an
and
incriminating
everything,
question.
So
Hey, go
know,
back to the defunct companies then.
Yeah.
no, I would say that exhaust systems are normally overhyped. I mean, the stock power bands on the motorcycles, the manufacturers spend years tuning those things, developing. They know how to make horsepower. All the aftermarket stuff, it's more of a fashion statement or a replacement thing that goes on. It could take the power band and move it from here to here or from here to up here or whatever, but it's not act like it's giving it a lot more power. So, I always tell people when they start to modify their machines, the most important thing is if you're going to invest in anything is the suspension, because that's an area where you can really make a difference in how the bike performs and how it suits and fits you and everything else. So obviously I steer them in that direction. And then when you ding the pipe up and you have to get a new pipe, then, obviously there's great sources for that. But, I don't know. As far as what you put on your body, the only other thing that I would say are neck braces. I've never been a fan of neck braces. And I've had a lot of friends that are paralyzed from racing over the years, and I do understand what they're trying to do with the neck brace to limit movement and stuff. But I've also seen cases where I believe that the neck brace is also. I don't know. I'm just going to leave it. I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to leave it there.
That's cool. That's cool.
I teach his own. If you feel more comfortable with it, use it. But that would be my
Scott,
two.
that goes back to Harry Hurt in the original helmet report in the incident. Tell me what kind of accident you're going to have, and I'll tell you what the best helmet is for that. So any safety gear, tell me what you're going to do, and I'll design a piece of safety gear. But every single accident is totally different. So
different. Yes, it is.
Find one size fits all.
It is.
That's
and it's
true,
just like
Scott.
they say with knee braces. Knee braces are designed to save your knees, but they transfer the force, the energy to different places than normal. So I mean, yeah.
Well, the old Scott plastic boot, it's defunct, so maybe we can kick them while they're down.
I love those. By the way. They were my favorite boot. Desert racing, I felt invincible in those, and if they were still available, I'd probably still wear them. But my CDs are pretty damn awesome right now. I love my CDs. My God, those are great boots.
Politically answered. Good job.
All right, it's my turn now, huh? Overhyped.
But here's the guy that knows right here.
Well, I don't know. It's funny. I'll add to your neck brace thing, and what Robin had to say about Dr. Harry Hurd. I'm an expert witness too that protects and defends a lot of safety equipment manufacturers. And in the world of safety, we are all looking for the next best thing. And part of this is a little bit of experimentation. There's an aspect to that. And if you remember when airbags came out in cars, they were killing babies in the front seat of cars because we didn't know that you really needed to put the baby seat in the back turned around. We didn't know. There's a learning curve that comes with this new technology with safety, because as I always describe, the dictionary definition of an accident is an unpredictable event. If you can't predict what's going to happen, then you can't predict how to prevent injury. And that
Right.
leads back to what Dr. Harry Hurt said. If you can tell me exactly how you're going to crash, I'll tell you exactly what to wear.
Yeah.
And that's why Scott and I have little differing opinions on neck braces. You know, I had a dear friend and family member die as a result of hyperextension of the neck. And I think a LEAP brace or a brace, similar neck brace, would have prevented that. But that's one accident out of many and many and many, many more that Scott has seen. I've seen a lot too, but you just don't know exactly the dynamics, the vectors, the G forces, you know, the breaking points. All of these scientific things are different with every accident. But back to the question that you asked me, the most overhyped tech. I was in the leather business for 20 years. We built all the leathers for motor clothes, Hungarica. We created the first gear brand. We were leather guys, and we pretty much owned the market. We loved leather. And then along comes this Canadian guy who decides to sell polyester mesh jackets that have pretty much zero abrasion resistance when it hits pavement. Sure, it was armored with temper foam or something, but we'd been selling $600 jackets, and this guy comes in and starts selling $120 jackets that, yeah, they're mesh. They're great in the summertime, but if you've ever seen one slide down the asphalt, it melts, and it melts right into your skin. So that's polyester. We did it a little more expensively with ballistic nylon and then zippered vents that opened up so that you still had an abrasion resistant protection on the outside. But these guys advertised polyester mesh as a protective riding gear. And I think that was just a complete BS campaign.
That's a great answer, Eric.
Yeah, sorry about that, but I had to slam them.
Yeah, that's good.
You know
that's
who
good.
they are.
Yeah, Robin, it's funny what you said about tell me how you'll fall, and I'll know exactly what to say. So, Eric, we have not released your episode yet. I think by the time this comes out, we may have, or we are right afterwards. But Eric said almost verbatim what you had just said, Robin. That was really funny.
It's one of those quotes in the industry.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. We'll go Scott, Robin, Eric. If the three of you had to form a race team today, this is going to be entertaining. Who's riding, who's wrenching, and who's PR?
Wow, let me think about that for a minute.
You may all have to answer at the same time.
I think we got the rider. We got just gonna
yeah,
figure
we
out
already know
the wrencher and the PR
No,
guy.
we already know. All of us are going to have exactly the same answer. So why don't we just skip to the chase?
The floor is open.
Harden is riding, I'm wrenching, and Robin is doing PR. That's it. Any arguments?
You good with that, Robin?
I would say
going
so.
back to the very beginning of my career, seeing guys like Scott out in the desert, and I realized really early on I have zero ability to ride a motorcycle, but I have even less trying to spin a wrench. And I can't remember to say, would you like fries with that at the end of every conversation? That ruled me out of the fast food industry. So I got to be a PR hack because that's all that's left open.
All right, cool. Everybody's got their own.
And Scott's faster than me, so he's elected. He's riding. I'll wrench. And you PR.
Yeah.
So
I think now that I think about it, I think we would make a really, really good team like that too.
Heck yeah.
I think so, man.
You definitely would. All right, next one is kind of the converse of the question prior with the overhyped. What's a product or trend you loved that the industry completely slept on? Robin, we'll start with you.
That's a little bit harder. We've seen some really great innovations that became overnight successes, but it took them 10, 15 years of some visionary just keep trying and keep building that better mousetrap. Maybe I'll tie it back in. It wasn't such technical advance, but let's go back to John and Rita Gregory and the motocross sock and selling socks out of the back of their family car. And I just learned when they were inducted into the Trailblazers Hall of Fame what JT stood for. And so I knew all of these things, and I thought I knew the history of our industry, and then it turns out I didn't know anything about it. So maybe this is a bonus question that the viewers have to tell us what JT Racing really stood for.
So, coincidence, the phone call that you just heard a moment ago was from John Gregory.
Oh,
Wow.
wow.
Small world.
John just called me. I've been trying to get a hold of him to come to my event in September, and he just returned the call.
That's crazy.
That's so funny you mentioned that.
That is crazy.
And what they oh, there we go, JT.
Eric's putting his JT
nice.
But from that JT sock, that evolved into protective gear, and the ALS helmet that they had that was the coolest thing ever. It wasn't very good as safety equipment, but it did get us to focus on safety and protective gear and all of that stuff. JT was the early leader for all of motocross apparel.
Okay.
That's awesome. Scott, what about you? What do you think is a product or
trend?
trend?
I've kind of drawn a blank. But if I think back to times when I knew of things that in my own mind was like a sure thing, and I knew it was just going to help the sport in so many ways, and it was going to be a really big deal, but it just fell on deaf ears to everybody in the industry and the media and everything, was when we started the KTM Junior Supercross Challenge. I came up with this idea. We came up with this idea to host this intermission program at the Supercrosses. We'd watch these DJs come out, have these foot races around the track for an intermission, or roll a tire with a stick and as for an intermission. And we came out with this kids program that we thought was just going to be great. And for the first 2 years, I couldn't get anybody to pay it any attention. We ran it out to the stadiums, and I go, it's the future. It's everything. It's what's not to like about it, But
it's hard to think
I was shocked at how, I still remember this now. I was shocked at how, unreceptive the industry was to that at the time. In hindsight, it changed everything in a lot of ways, changed things for KTM. But I had a hard time explaining to even the people at KTM. So I don't know. At the end of the day, and that's a great sample. The same thing with the 300 two-stroke. It's now the biggest selling bike in the off-road market. When we launched that, nobody would buy it. They said nobody will ever buy it. The factory, none of the distributors around the world ordered it. Nobody wanted it. It was just they didn't understand it. It wasn't an open bike. It wasn't a 250. They couldn't classify it, and they didn't completely understand it. And our industry is really kind of, for as free thinking as we like to think we are, we get locked into, we get pretty myopic at times. And I still see that right now in the industry. And we could go on and on about that. Rob and I talk about this all the time, but we just get locked into doing things just because that's the way it is. They've done it before.
They expect it, right?
Yeah. And so I don't know. I those are just two examples where I've seen where
those
things,
are great
at least
examples.
In my mind, would like, this is a no-brainer, but boy, I had a hard time convincing a lot of other people in the industry at the time.
Yeah. Good answers, Eric, with your JT Racing hat.
I'll take it off eventually. I don't look good in hats, but still, because I've got hair.
Hey.
What do you mean, man? What do you mean?
Shots fired.
More hair I lose, the more head I get, though. Okay. My thought is, I know this electric vehicles are kind of a controversial topic, electric motorcycles particularly, but I was really impressed when I went to the Reno Supercross. Oh God, when was it? Probably 5-6 years ago. And a local guy here out of Carson City, Nevada, where I live, Ty Tremaine, podiumed on an electric motocross bike called an Alta, ALTA, Alta. And endurocross or motocrosses are very short races. And the objections to EVs are generally they cost too much and they don't go very far. The range anxiety is sort of the big objection. And Scott knows this because he worked for Zero Motorcycles for years too. So Scott's got a really diverse background in EVs. But I found it kind of interesting that either we weren't allowed, and Scott, you can chime into this, but now, Alta has come and then gone. We ignored it. It wasn't really a big deal. I thought it was a huge deal. Here's an electric bike that's competing against internal combustion engines. and it won, or at least it got second or third place. I can't remember.
Mm-hmm.
To podium here, and I watched it. I was there, and I was totally impressed because this thing was dead silent and faster than stink. So was Ty Tremaine. Now the Stark Varg is on the market, and it's getting really great reviews. And oh my word, it's profitable too. So
Really?
allegedly, they're selling. Robin, tell me if I'm wrong. Their
No,
sales.
that's the latest press release from them is that globally
Yeah,
their sales are up. Where everybody else is down or fighting for market share, Stark is through the roof, 50 plus
Wow.
percent.
Stark is
Yeah, they had a
growing like
profitable.
weed. Go ahead, Scott.
Now they had a profitable Q1 and I think Q2 as well, and they're trending in sales and stuff. It'll be interesting to see, how much that continues and if it's just going to fill a certain niche in the
Right.
market or how much it's going to expand or,
Well, why do you
it,
guys think that is compared to other EVs?
Well, because motocross is a predictable number of laps. You can gauge mathematically how long your battery is going to last for that
Yeah.
moto.
Good
It's
point.
unlike, going for a tour. Oh, we're going to head
Right.
out towards Texas, and God knows where I'm going to get a charge. It's very predictable. He's doing a route. Scott also sold zero motorcycle EVs to a lot of police departments that would do a beat, a predictable route. And when you have that predictable route, a battery powered machine is fine because you do that route, it's 55 miles, you come put a new battery in and you do it again. You don't wait for it to
Perfect
charge,
sense.
although
Right.
charging rates are getting faster. But with motocross, it's super predictable. And I sort of think we ignored the Alta win for a while. And now Stark would be really cool if it comes back and it starts to win some competitive events. And Scott, you're more of an expert on EVs and even motocross or endurocross, but do you ever think one of these Starks could enter a Romaniacs, or is it pure motocross?
well, I mean, it could. The downside it has is it still has weight. It's heavier than the other bikes. There's
Battery.
that effect to it because of the battery. But they've done a phenomenal job with it, and it does even outside of motocross for just a trail ride. You can go out for a couple of hours on the trail on it, and it'll probably work fine for that as well. It does work fine for that as well. So there's a more variety of use applications where it actually works. And for guys just starting out, I mean, it's a great opportunity to ride and get. I think their customers fall into two groups. Full stable guys that are just adding another interesting thing to the stable of bikes that they have. They want an electric bike. There's a lot to be said for all that torque. I mean, what are they 600 to 800 pounds of torque? They on the top
And up to
model
80 horsepower. You can gauge
and
that, crank it to 80.
80 horsepower. I mean, there's a lot to be said for all that. So, full stable guys. And then I think Gen X and Gen Z guys. My doctor bought one. He says, he's didn't own a motorcycle and he bought one. He's bought two now. Actually, he bought a motocrosser and then he got rid of it when he saw that there was a street legal version coming out and he got that. And they're also buying them dealer or distributor direct as well. They're using the Echo model, Robin, and so that appeals to Gen X and Gen Z buying stuff online. So they have a lot of things going for them. They've got a great product. They've got it in a certain niche that is working and stuff. When it comes to racing them on a track, I think the biggest challenge for them racing on a track is, and we've already seen this on a few events, is you don't know where your fellow competitor is going into the corner. You don't know how close he is. You
Because you can't
can't
hear
feel
him.
him
You can't hear
because you
them.
can't
That's right.
hear him. And that will lead to some
Contact.
some comings togethers that normally wouldn't have happened.
We're gonna need
Because you
some
just
baseball cards and some clothespins,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there should be something that could be said for that. But anyway, I think they're doing a great job. I think
That's cool.
we'll see. It remains to be seen if it continues on for years to come, or if it's
Yeah.
something that's going to they're going to fill that niche, and that's going to be it.
Okay.
All right. Robin, Eric, Scott. Mount Rushmore of individuals who help this industry in any role, in your opinion.
We think about that a lot of time at Dealernews because, the founder of Dealernews and the guy who created the IMS Consumer Show series and the guy who created the Dealer Expo and all that, Larry Hester, just passed away. He's one of those unsung heroes. Nobody knows or remembers Larry. I remember him as our landlord when I went to work at Dealernews. 25 years after the magazine had been launched, Hester was still there behind the scenes, and then he was the one of those like those coaching trees that goes down in college football. Steve Lewis went to work for him. Steve Lewis then went on and founded the action sports industry, and then Steve Lewis also did PRI on the hot rod side of things and stuff. So that's a direct branch out of Larry Hester and what was William Lawrence was the original company. William Hester or Lawrence Hester and William Bagnall, Bill Bagnall, who was the guy at Cycle magazine. So all this stuff comes together. But he would be that first guy on Mount Rushmore, and then right next to him would be somebody like Soichiro Honda, who he's got 500 million units sold globally. That guy,
That's amazing.
you meet the nicest people on a Honda because it was his passion project that led to Honda becoming the global leader in all of two-wheel sales in all of history. You can't leave him off. Then it gets down into those other guys. It's like John Penton, his roots lead to KTM, which leads to
You're allowed to repeat, Scott. You're allowed to repeat.
The modern day. He took the concept. He was racing jack piners on a BMW, big old heavy bike that had no business out there, and he was the guy who said, "Let's make a lightweight two-stroke dirt bike and go out there," and he revolutionized again our whole industry because it was a passion-driven thing. He wanted to win races. This was his vision to how to achieve that goal. So how do you leave that guy off? And now he's celebrating 100 years. That's pretty darn amazing. And unlike Mount Rushmore, not all, but some of our heroes are still alive to be put on there. And then I'll go to an industry-specific guy who is involved in everything, and nobody knows the depths that Don Brown had.
No,
So, like Discover Today's Motorcycling that became Ride With Us program, that was Don Brown and Don Emdy and the Palm Springs Summit. And they brought together our industry at a time when sales were terrible. The world was horrible. We'd just gone through 2 recessions. And these guys said, well, okay, instead of whining about it, let's lead. We're industry leaders. And they pulled off the impossible. Don's also the guy who got Texas Pacific Group to save Ducati when it went bust. Don's the guy who Johnson Motors, Triumph. Don's the guy who created the predecessor to all podcasts and stuff. He went to the local, Gil Stratton was a sportscaster in LA on Channel 5, and he got a month or a weekly show on TV and then radio for Johnson Motors to promote Triumph motorcycles. And then in turn, that led to getting Eakins and guys like that in Hollywood to ride his bikes. And then guys like that training guys like Steve McQueen to ride and getting them on Triumphs and all of that. Keenan Wynn, all those guys were Triumph guys through Johnson Motors because Don Brown made all of that happen. Then you take it, the Checkers and these motorcycle clubs that were promoting all the races. Don Brown, one of the original Checkers. Don Brown was one of those guys that did all of that. Again, even before his accident, he had asthma. He couldn't really race, but he still raced over his doctor's orders, over everything. And he's got stories of Catalina Grand Prix with Johnny McLaughlin coming by and kicking him at the cliff just to see if he'd go off this side and laughing at him and roosting him and going past. And yet Don kept coming back for that. So he is the unsung hero of our industry just as much as Honda, the Pentons, and all that, but maybe more so for me because of the industry perspective and because he was the guy who I interviewed with when I got my job. And so I got to learn some of the things that he'd done. And even now, I'm still finding out more things that guy had his tentacles into.
Yeah.
He knew it all. He was a true leader. How many heads do we have on Rushmore? Maybe
4.
one.
Yeah, I think.
Don't forget the Indian chief.
Or the Floyd Clymer and what he did, or Berliner Motors, or any of those guys, but they don't have the long legs that still reach to us every day. I would say Scot Harden belongs on there because the KTM
Yeah.
Junior Supercross. Guys like
That's
Ryan
right.
Dungey came out of that program. Our industry is still shaped by KTM Junior Supercross, and what Scott had learned and what Scott was able to do with Rod Bush in saving KTM from itself back in the day. We need another team like Bush and Harden to help KTM out of its current troubles instead of Bajaj. So
Sure.
I'm
God
glad you
love
said
Bajaj and
Scott.
their bankers, but let's add
You know,
Scott.
But
Scott,
you lost me. You lost me when you mentioned my name in the same
Oh,
breath with Don Brown and you know, these other guys. I gotta say, I mean, you really hit on something really important, Robin. It's not who you think. I mean, I was thinking about it with Soichiro Honda, obviously, what he did to the whole global thing for two wheels in general and everything. And the Davidson brothers are probably back in there somewhere
Yeah.
in that panacea, But as far as people that actually took in my lifetime that had such an impact in there, I would put Bruce Brown on there.
yeah,
You
that's
know,
right.
I mean, Bruce Brown. I mean, he did what he did for surfing. He did something parallel with surfing and motorcycles that are still today impacting people's lives and drawing them to the sport and showing it in its best capacity. He's got to be on there, that had an impact across generations of
Endless
people. And of course,
summer and
Malcolm
autumn.
has
He
got
said
to
they
be. If
ridiculous.
Malcolm's not, there, he's damn close to it.
Malcolm
You
Smith.
got to you think about that. But Robin's point, I think, is really well taken. We all think in terms of people that we've all household names, and things like that, and racers and all this other stuff. But there were these other guys behind the scenes, and Don Brown is a classic example of it. That pulled so many. You start tugging on the thread of power sports, and you'll find his name there, you know, everywhere you look, in every corner. And I don't know. So we've got, who do we have now? We have Don Brown, we have Soichiro Honda, we have
Mhm.
uh, Bruce Brown,
Malcolm,
Ma-
motorcyclist of the century.
Matt, Motorcycle Century. So, Eric, I'll turn it over to you. Who do you have?
man, you guys have listed a long, long arm's length list there of heroes of mine too. And Scott, you're still up there. You're right up there, man. By the way, I'm wearing my KTM underwear today in your honor.
It's a good thing you're not showing it, man.
Seriously.
This is a kid friendly show here.
Yeah. You know who really influenced me? Another one of those kind of guys behind the scenes that changed me is, and Robin, you'll appreciate this because you're an old magazine hack. I loved magazines from the '70s. You know,
Oh,
Joe Parkhurst. I
Yeah.
graduated from Mad Magazine to motorcycle magazines. And Cycle World magazine was one of my favorites because it had Hector Katamatore's cartoons in it. It had motorcycle tests. It was technical. It was about road bikes and dirt bikes, and all kinds of motorcycles. And then, as I grew up, got into the industry, met Joe, met Larry Little at the time, and before that was David Edwards, and I got as a participant in the industry, and I bought advertising from Cycle World magazine. I kind of came full circle from reader to advertiser. I got invited on their annual Cycle World Trek, which is for advertisers only, and that is an industry networking event around riding dirt bikes, either in Baja, northern Arizona, the Mogollon Rim, and then Utah for 1 or 2 years, and then up in Northern California around Huntington Lake for years. The Trek was an amazing event, and Joe Parkhurst made that all happen because he was so passionate and knew how to take that passion and put it on printed pages, paper and ink. Now,
That's
we've
huge.
passed that era. Magazines are gone. E-zines are the new hot thing. It's still not quite the same, and Joe's gone, but the era and the heritage of Cycle World magazine still remains. And Joe's one of those guys that was just if the concept was right, the money would come. He wasn't in it for the money. He did it for the concept. He got the concept right, and then the money came. And by the way, he also then created Road and Track magazine and several others in the automotive side. So he was two wheels and four. One other guy I might mention, which I don't think you guys will, um, Scott, is Jeffrey Bluestein, who was part of the AMF Harley Davidson days as an engineer, ended up when the management team of about 8 people and the dealers pitched in money to buy Harley Davidson away from AMF, the bowling ball company. And that was an American business lesson in business schools across the country for decades on how Harley Davidson turned it around from the era where they didn't leak oil, they marked their territory in the 70s and the 80s, till they created the Evo motor with Jeff Bluestein and his team's help, and Harley Davidson was up and away for the next 4 decades. And that turnaround story is quite amazing. And yes, it's very Harley Davidson specific, but it elevated the entire industry with it to a certain degree.
Yeah.
Harley Davidson was really starting to roll up.
I was inducted into the Hall of Fame with Von Beals, who was part of that. He was
part of that
team that did all of that, and I got to know and talk to him. I'm glad you brought that up, Eric.
And Clyde Fessler I did business with them too. I ended up becoming their leather supplier for decades.
Without those folks and those guys, Harley Davidson may not even really exist at this point.
Agreed.
It'd be toast.
Yep.
It'd be toast. Absolutely.
Yeah,
well,
it was
my answer.
Eric. It was the Gang of 13 that pulled that off. Von Beals was that first chairman, and then guys like Tierlink and Bluestein and the other engineering guys moved over to become those suits at the table, along with Willie G wearing a dirty T-shirt.
And a beret.
That saved Harley Davidson. I mean, it was literally hours away because AMF had just cut it adrift. They had to make it happen because there was no other option.
Yeah, we need those guys back now. Anyway, okay, that was my answer. Roll on.
Awesome answers, boys. We finished up the break the ice section. Now we're gonna kind of get into the whole genre of the Three Amigos here. So, who met who first, and tell us the circumstances how the three of you guys crossed paths.
Wow.
I can remember because when I met Eric, I just started at McMullen, and they hired me to do VW Trends magazine, but my boss was doing hot bike, and he took me over to Intersport Fashions West to be run by Eric's boss, John Wyckoff. And Wyckoff said, "You'll never make it, kid. Get out of my office." And I went from that, walking out, to seeing Eric sitting in his office there. Where were you guys? You were just over the hill from us, or under the underpass. The rail bridge was where Intersport was from
in
McMullen.
Fullerton.
Fullerton. So that was, I didn't really register because I was still so crestfallen from Wyckoff throwing me under the bus in front of my boss, and I'm not going to make it. I'm a failure. And later, when Wyckoff was one of my columnists and then Eric became my columnist, I think I made it. But Wyckoff, he never made a mistake. He just might have misremembered something once. He was never wrong. He just may have misremembered how it happened.
And none of you guys really knew John Wyckoff. Robin and I know him from Intersport Fashions West. He was a really kind of super eccentric, super smart dude, really great businessman, and his own PR agency all rolled into one. And he was a great guest speaker, a keynote speaker at a lot of the trade shows, a lot of the national sales meetings too. He was sort of like a Marine drill sergeant who would just grind you down to a pace and then build you back stronger than you were before. He would do that emotionally, and I'll never forget, in front of the Parts Unlimited crowd of 300 sales reps and staff, he called them crumb pickers because they picked up the crumbs behind Tucker Rocky. That was a famous speech. Tucker Rocky would go make the sale, and then the Parts Unlimited reps would come in and pick up the reorders. And oh my God, you should have seen Fred Fox and Jeff Fox come out of their chair about ready to kill him. But at the same time, he after that, he left the crowd stronger and more excited than they were before, even though he insulted them up front. So don't take it personally, Robin.
Yeah, I'm in good company with people that John beat up.
Yep.
So then, Scott, I'm in college journalism major. I think I'm going to be the next Hunter Thompson, and somehow I finagle my way into covering the Mint 400, just like Hunter Thompson did. And this is the moment of my career. And we go out to backcountry, my roommate and I, because he had a car. I didn't even have a car. I had my XL 175. It wasn't going to make it all the way to Vegas for that. So I got credentials. I got everything. but I have no idea how this works. And we drove until all through the night, left class on Friday afternoon, drove through the night, ended up out in the desert somewhere, and there was a campfire. That's how we knew. We just pulled off to the side of the road. I have no idea what's going on. Scott's now mother-in-law, Betty Johnson, was out there waiting for Scott's mother-in-law, Jack Johnson, to come through, and she's just sitting by this campfire. I didn't know, but Christy was sleeping in their car. Now Scott's wife. So my first real assignment as a desert cover guy, I'm going to be the next Hunter Thompson. And I sat there with Betty and watched the fire and had a great time. And then the next day, the first cloud of dust that comes across the desert is Jack Johnson leading the way. And that's her boy. And then Christy's like washing the goggles for her brother. And then the next guy to come through, or maybe the third guy to come through, is Scott, her boyfriend. And he comes ripping up. And same thing, they gas him up, and two women gassing up his bike, cleaning his goggles, and off he goes. And that was my first experience. And it goes from that to utter climax. We get back in the car and drive hungover all the way back to college. And I filed this story, and this is back in the day before instant gratification, the internet. And it took them 8 months before it ever ran. And everything, all my pictures, my great story, everything down to one paragraph of race results, which was crap, but that was it. That was my first experience with Scot Harden.
That's 2 seconds. Gas him and go.
Yep.
Gas him and go. Guy, I remember you sharing that, Robin, that story. You know, I knew of Eric and Robin long before I met them. You know, Robin, I'd been reading his columns and stuff, and I'd seen his names and bylines and different things and for different things. And then, you know, and as I was starting my career in the motorcycle industry, you know, Eric was always somebody that I looked up to and would heard about, you know, and just, there was just something about Eric that was, that made you want to get closer, because you knew you were getting closer to the source when it came to how this business works and everything else. And I would see these things and probably read some columns from him before we even met. But, you know, we probably met back in the, you know, officially in the 80s sometime, maybe early 90s, but 80s, somewheres in there. I probably bumped into Eric's brother, actually.
Yeah, Mark.
Through your brother, through Mark.
For land use manager.
Got a Baja and stuff.
The MIC.
You know, and all of that, you know, all of you know, his brother was a racer, quite a good racer. Anyway, and, you know, we just met, but, you know, as the farther we went along in the industry and the more we kept going to events and stuff, you know, our paths just really, really got tight.
Yeah. On that note, Scott, I wanted to ask you, sorry to interrupt, Eric.
Yeah.
Were there any moments for you guys between you as a 2 or as 3 where you guys realized that you're in this for life together? Any particular bonding memories?
Early on.
Well, Eric and I spent a lot of time on the trail together. You know, we got to go out and ride together. Nice. So, but, you know, we were already lifers by then. But I just knew that Eric was, you know, Eric and I were cut from the same cloth when it came to that. You know, getting on a bike and going somewhere that nobody else wants to go and or would think about riding it there. Eric and I are cut from the same cloth that way. You know, Robin, on the other hand, we've done rides together and stuff. But Robin, on the other hand, you know, I realized really early on that if you really wanted to know what was going on in this industry that we're part of, that's your source right there. I mean, he had his mind for it and his ability to, you know, put together scenarios and read past the press releases and read past all the things that you heard on the side to get down to what was really going on. If you want to know what the heck was really going on. I realized very early on that Robin was the source for that. He still is.
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't think anybody knows more about what's going on in this industry than he does. But, you know, it was clear that, you know, he's out there with my mother-in-law and my future wife before we even know each other. You know, you travel in those circles and it just all comes to pass.
We got to sit down with Robin at the Costa Mesa Speedway, and after that night, Serge and I were talking about it. We only got maybe 20 minutes or so around a table before the race started, but he's just dropping bomb after bomb after bomb. We're like, oh, that makes sense why that's like that. That makes sense why that's like that.
Yeah, all the stuff that doesn't go into dealer news.
Yeah, the rest of us are playing two-dimensional chess, and I think sometimes we think Robin's playing 3 or 4-dimensional chess.
3 or 4-dimensional chess, yeah.
That's why he's the best in the biz, man.
Yeah.
Well, I learned all of that from Don Brown. I'm just if I didn't know, I just asked Don because he already knew and he knew it was going to happen. So the first issue of Dealer News has Eldon Wright replacing Don Brown at Johnson Motors. That's one of the cover stories. Their very first issue, 1965. That's how early Don Brown. By the third issue, 1965, Don Brown's predicting the day when computers will be part of every dealership and how all of our inventory management and all that stuff is going to be done. And this is in the days of Big Blue, giant, huge computer that's the size of a building. And yet he was already talking about handheld devices and scanning barcodes at a dealership. 1965. That's how visionary Don Brown was.
And most dealers were operating their inventory control off of a box of 3x5 cards.
Yeah. Cigar box with receipts in it. That was it.
That's crazy.
And he started tracking the actual sales too. I mean, if you want to know who is selling what and getting any kind of metrics on industry data, he was your source. He was the original guy for all of that.
He was the guy. And then to take it further, his forecasting model, he went with housing starts and he went with oil prices and he went way outside of our industry because he knew those things would impact the discretionary spending on a motorcycle. Absolute visionary and just an utter genius.
Yep.
Guys, what was the industry like back in the 80s when you guys were all breaking into this thing?
It was a little bit of the Wild West for sure.
Yeah, it was.
And it was kind of guys like us that could gunsling a little bit more than some of the others. It wasn't as corporate, obviously. Things evolved, but we follow the automotive industry by 5, maybe 10 years. Robin might say more. But we kind of always watched what automotive was doing in the terms of retail training and efficiency and business operations, et cetera. But we didn't really have what are called now 20 groups back then. Somebody like, Gart Sutton and Ed Lemko brought that kind of data analysis to the retail dealerships in the 80s, finally kind of getting us some sort of benchmarking going on. And a 20 group means that you invite 19 of your retailing peers from non-competing territories from across the country. Let's say you're a $4 million Kawasaki, Yamaha, KTM dealer. You have 3-4 franchises and your volume back then is $4 million a year. So you'd get 19 peers and you'd all share your profit and loss statements, which are all somewhat standardized, and you start to benchmark against each other. And that's like, your tire sales suck, but boy, you sure are selling the hell out of clothing and helmets. What am I doing right and what are you doing wrong? And they would share with each other to help build the business to be more and more sophisticated. And we learned that from the automotive industry in the 80s. And some of those guys are doing real well now. We have some newer, younger 20 groups that are going on in the industry, and things have evolved. It's not the Wild West that it used to be. It's very computerized and data-driven now.
Scott, were you still racing in the 80s before you went corporate, or were you doing both?
No. I got my first job in the industry in 1982. I was a factory rider for Husqvarna from 77 on for 5 years at that point. And so, but my deal was if I got a job, but I'm going to continue. I also had a contract to race. And I was very fortunate through my life. The companies that I worked for, Husqvarna and later KTM, they were enthusiast companies. That was our strength, was that as a vice president of KTM, I was racing every weekend sale. So I raced professionally all through the 80s until the end of the 80s. As things ramped up with KTM and I'd gotten more and more of those things out of my system, I took little breaks from the real serious stuff, but it always came back full circle. By the time, 2004 and 5, I'm back doing Dakar again, so I was never far away from that side of it. I stayed in good shape. I rode, I was competitive. I one number. I rode in the senior classes. And
How
the
old were
classes.
you in 04 and 05?
I was 49 in 05. So I was 49. I was the oldest factory KTM rider at Dakar ever.
Yeah.
So, but that was the strength of those companies. They were enthusiast companies. That's what separated us from the Japanese. We didn't need focus groups. Our focus groups were the weekend, talking to the riders and how the bikes perform for us. That's where the 300 was born from. We just knew it was a great bike. We rode it. We built one in America. We saw how well it worked. We knew it would be a good bike. All of those things just came from that. We never had a focus group. We never did surveys. We never did any of that stuff. We built the whole KTM thing off of that. It wasn't later until it became super corporate that all the other gear knuckleheads came along and the yes men, I call them.
Too many chiefs?
The yes men that in the college trained guys that, I've been to college too, but
corporatized
college trained guys that were, more interested in saying, what the boss wanted to say or wanted to hear. Well, we see what that got them in the end. But, I don't know. I was very fortunate. I was very different. I was able to have a parallel lives in both the corporate world and in the racing world.
Robin, what'd you think back in those early days?
You said this was kid friendly, right? So
no, wait, it's not. I'm lying.
If it was the 80s, you don't remember any of that stuff. But
like the cocaine cowboys days or what? Of the motorcycle
crazy
industry?
That early on, even when I was still in college, as the magazine guy, I'm going to cover the Hells Angels. Canada did a drag race team, and I went to all Harley drag races. Wow. And the head of the HAs in Canada at the time was a guy named Robin. So we ended up talking to each other. It's like, I don't belong here in your pits or anything, but we had a common interest in that. And then later on with Paisano, when they were still up in the old hotel building. And then fast forward years later, I actually worked for Joe Teresi and the Paisano group doing V-Twin news for them for a year. And it's like, that's really wild. And it doesn't get any wilder than that circle of people and that portion of the business. But it's like everything else. And I got lucky to get in with Don Brown and with Larry Hester and the people like that. And I always say the day that I started at Dealernews was the day I stopped being a journalist, because instead of hard facts or dragging us down or going to be the next Woodward and Bernstein, yeah, I knew all this stuff, but I also knew that there were ways that we could be better. And Dealernews with the Top 100 program and the things, we became the biggest cheerleader. I'm not going to say I'm Pollyanna. I got myself fired twice for saying the sky is falling when I thought it was. And I wasn't wrong. And the guys who fired me don't have jobs now, and Dealernews is still here after all this time. Right. But we are not a hard news agency. We are not journalism. We are promoters and cheerleaders and advocates for the dealers and for our industry as a whole.
Yeah. So, speaking of cocaine cowboys, here's a picture of the finish line of the Baja 500. That's my brother-in-law, Jack Johnson, first overall. Man. I'm back here. There's my hat. You can barely see in the background.
Yeah.
That is Pablo Escobar.
Yeah.
And that is his brother right there. Pablo Escobar.
Oh, my God.
And I'm right to the right of Pablo Escobar at the finish line of the 1979 Baja 500.
That is so awesome. That's awesome.
So, cocaine cowboys, we have some credibility.
That's cool. That's awesome, man.
He was big into motorcycles. I don't know if you've ever watched.
Yeah.
Videos.
I've watched a few of his documentaries. He always rode a motorcycle.
He was riding around, racing around the thing. Well, his brother wanted to be an off-road racer, and they would come to the SCORE events to check it out. And they would come up and hang out and stuff and do all of that. Of course, at the time, we didn't know who the heck they were, but we saw them around. And somebody happened to take a picture of him there at the finish line, and I'm standing right behind him. And by the way, the other guys next to this, they're all bodyguards.
Jeez, that's insane. Hey, here's a fun question for you guys. Who was the most intense back then, and who was the most laid back?
in the business or in racing.
Let's go business, because kind of all three of you have been in the business.
Super intense. Oh man.
Not necessarily super intense, but out of you three.
Yeah, I can't remember his name. This was from like a helmet company. Robin, you might be able to help me remember his name. He had a red nose from drinking too much. He was Mr. Cocktails, and it was one of those helmet brands that's gone now, like Buco helmets or somebody. He was intense to go on the road with. I used to ride in the right-hand seat with a lot of sales reps, the reps that are out there selling for the distributors. And sometimes we'd end up, I'm the clothing guy, and then I'd be riding with a helmet guy. And then the sales rep is driving, because the sales rep loves to bring guests into the dealership. And, I'm the big leather guy. And then I'm trying to remember his name. He died of alcohol poisoning, but God, he was freaking intense. He never smiled. All he wanted was the sale. He was the opposite of that. If you get the concept right, the money will come. It's all about the money to him, and he'll get the concept right later. He was just awful to travel with, and I'll remember his name here in a minute. But it's one of the guys that I just never wanted to be like. I never wanted personality traits anything like him. So there are those personalities that you learn from. I want to be more like that guy, but not that guy. Right. I'll remember his name later, but that's the point.
Well, he was tough, but the toughest guy of all time ever was John McLaughlin. John was in World War II, and he was a P-38 pilot, and he got shot down in flames over Germany. He ended up as a POW. On the way in, it burned his eyelids off.
Wow.
And so we would be in meetings years later. John be asleep, but he never closed his eyes. And it's like, well, we don't know, to be quiet or do we involve him in a conversation? But he was just, 5 foot nothing. He took his race mentality from kicking Don Brown off the cliff at Catalina. That's how he went, full throttle, wide open, and torpedoes be damned. So it's like, okay, guy with no eyelids, that's kind of tough. He's going up to Laguna Seca one year, the guard rips his arm off, and still, now he's got one arm and no eyelids, and he doesn't miss a day of work. That guy is in there to win it, and so he's like the alcoholic guy, but he's ultra passion driven. But a penny. Our accountant at the time, Ken Yee, who later McMullen and Yee, who I worked for at another time, shorted him 25 cents on a commission check. Granted, 25 cents was a little bit more in the 80s than it is, but still, it wasn't that big a deal. One-armed John grabs the accountant by the neck and holds him over the stairwell and says, "I'm going to drop your ass down here unless you pay me my money." And it's like,
oh my gosh,
how does that guy do that? And once he got his money, okay, now we're on to the next challenge. This is
all right. That's intense. That wins it right there.
Yeah, man.
I think our industry, we've all seen, guys come and go and different characters. Our industry draws its share of characters. Let's face it this way. A lot of people come into it with a lot of interesting backgrounds. They're drawn to it for the same reasons we are, because of the excitement and the passion for motorcycles and everything else. You get the right person, you add in the right chemical additives, to the right in some people, whether it be alcohol or back in the 80s, the Oblivion marching powder. It was there were some things, a lot of stuff that went on in that. I will say this, back during my racing days, I rode off of emotion. Emotion is what fueled me. The madder I got, in a lot of cases, it works against you. You shouldn't ride with emotion because you make bad decisions, they'll tell you. But not in my case, it seemed to be a driving force for me. And there were times when you really wouldn't want to be around me.
Right.
At certain points in times. My wife can testify to that for you. But
back.
We all have met those people and stuff. And that's what's the great thing about Powersports, isn't it? It's all the characters. Our sport has some great great character. I was just at AMA BMD. I had dinner with Brad Lackey the other night. And, Brad is a hero to me, first American world champion, 500cc class. At the same event, I'm over with Chris Carter hanging out with Kenny Roberts. And Kenny Roberts is there, and they're doing that Talent Cup event with Cody Cup there on those 390 KTM, clone things. And Kenny Roberts is there. Kenny Roberts Jr. is there. And Kenny Roberts Sr. is just as freaking intense as I've ever known him or seen him to be. I mean, he was there as the team manager for this effort. How old is Kenny in the late 70s? I don't know. Gosh. And here he is out there just, driven to win. They got a podium, thank goodness. But talk about characters. I mean, geez Louise, Brad Lackey, Kenny Roberts, they're still around. It's God bless. Thank God they're still around.
That's right. Your guys' careers obviously overlapped in when you guys started, all were in the corporate scene together. Any shared projects, maybe behind the scenes collaborations or moments that you kind of leaned on each other a little bit?
I'll say, Robin, you and me, or you and I've done quite a few things together. It's funny when Robin was sort of between Dealernews, when Advanced Star dumped it before Bob Altoff bought it and got Robin in place. Robin and I teamed up together at MAG, the Motorsport Aftermarket Group. I was VP of sales, and Robin helped do all the PR. We put together an online e-learning program there too. So we've worked together a couple times, even at Scorpion when I started the helmet company. Robin came in and just used our offices and did our PR for us and our press releases. And it's been really fun working with Robin. The only
So
things
there
I've
was
done.
a day at Scorpion when Eric bought one of Scott's bikes. So Scott comes down and drops off the KTM. It's his backup bike. It's got titanium one-off exhaust. It's got the route book. It's got all of the really
Super
cool
Enduro.
stuff in the world. And so that was the three of us together in Scorpion's
Well,
parking lot looking at Eric's.
And Eric hooked me up. I was a Scorpion rider. You hooked me up with the
Yeah.
gear. I was wearing
ZX
the
deal.
gear. We shot an ad, I think.
Yeah.
You featured me in for Scorpion, which, by the way, still was some of the best fitting, best thought out adventure gear that I'll compare it against anything to today still. I mean, that was a really nicely done line of product, Eric.
Thank you.
Yeah,
It was
I
cool.
still got one of my jackets from that. And I think Christy wears it now because it won't fit me.
So that was probably
And
where
then
the three of us came together at Scorpion.
Okay.
Robin and
guys-
I did dealer trips to KTM, the KTM
Yeah.
factory together.
Austria.
He was press, me as media relations manager, vice president, KTM. We got pictures of me, funny stuff there, out in the marijuana fields and stuff there near the factory.
Him.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's right.
They
Yeah.
have things in Manicopen.
You guys are
Anyway.
all such salt of the earth, humble guys, so you probably don't realize how freaking cool this is to listen
for
to
us.
you guys. Like,
Yeah.
I can't stop smiling, man. This is incredible. The next question: what are some of the big industry changes, or the biggest industry changes that you guys lived through together, and how did you respond to them?
Well,
Why don't we start with lead band, boys? That was a big challenge. Lead band.
well, now, and the modern version, PFAS.
Yeah.
PFAS now. The lead band, lead is a toxic chemical, and it's used in the manufacture of motorcycles and batteries. And the Consumer Product Safety Commission in our lovely federal government decided to ban all products that had lead on them for children under, what's the number, 12?
12.
So 12
Yeah.
years of age. And basically what that did was shut down the sales of all miniature motorcycles for kids. This is Scot Harden's junior KTM program, because all those little motorcycles have batteries on them. So CPSC sought fit to literally cease and desist, and Malcolm Smith along with a dear friend of all three of ours, Scott Cox, put together a demonstration at Malcolm's dealership in Riverside, California. Invited, God, there must have been thousands of people there. And all the little kids that came in had protest T-shirts on that says, "We don't want to eat them, we want to ride them." Because that's free. What's that say? Free
Malcolm Smith.
Free
Yeah,
Malcolm
Smith.
I had a
Wow.
free
he was
Malcolm
he was a
Smith
scofflaw.
t-shirt
He
made
was going to go to
because
jail
they
for
were going to
selling.
arrest him. Remember, they
That's
were going to arrest him for
crazy.
selling.
Yeah,
They were going to
because
arrest him for selling it.
he had all these motorcycles in stock and he couldn't sell them. Literally, the CPSC just cease and desist. We will not sell these motorcycles to children anymore. And now look at Stasic. They're all battery powered EV bicycles with no pedals. So everybody's got EVs. Everybody's got batteries under their butts nowadays for one product or another. But the lead ban was an industry wide shutdown by our federal government. And through protests and the advocacy of our Motorcycle Industry Council and making comments to Congress and the CPSC, we were able to evade that whole catastrophe. Scott, you had more.
Do you remember? Do you remember at that day where that picture was taken, with the television cameras and everything going? Troy Lee and Jeff Ward bought a mini bike from Malcolm on site, did the paperwork and did the transaction in front of the cameras to show,
Go ahead, arrest me.
Yeah, go ahead and arrest me, which I thought was just the greatest PR ever. But, the whole industry, and I'm going to leave this for Robin to wrap up because he's the guy you need to hear from, is our industry has gone in waves and we've seen it all. We've seen the boom of the 70s when there was over 1 million units being sold in America, and crazy days and just no end in sight, to the downturn in the early 80s when things really started slipping off, things, that's when I joined. I mean, when sales started contracting, a little bit of ripples to the late 80s and early 90s, and then the end of the 90s into the early 2000s, here we go again. We're back on top. We're over 1 million units in North America or US before the Great Recession hit. Happy days are here again. And then all of a sudden, boom, we're back down to 400 to 500,000 units real quick by 2010, 11. And then watching everything that's gone on in between now. And here we are back in 2025, and we're back up to 500,000 units or roughly a year in America, which has been kind of the equilibrium where it's always, there's a core market there, and there's some good times when more people have more discretionary income and they come in and they want to try it out, and then they go away, and Robin's seen all of this, and now we're with tariffs and everything else. I do consulting for a Chinese company. We've got tariffs now to deal with, so I don't know, Robin, what do you say?
Well, Eric said the magic letter CPSC, because back when in the 80s, when CPSC outlawed three-wheelers, same thing. We were at our high point. We were selling 500,000 motorcycles, but we were selling 500,000 three-wheelers simultaneously. Our market was actually 1.2 to 1.5 million new units. Dealers were making money hand over fist. There's no end in sight. Oh, we're going to ban three-wheelers and kill 50% of the market overnight. And that was where MIC and everybody, we worked with CPSC, all the legislation and the tags are on motorcycles and now four-wheelers and stuff. We did rally as an industry, the OEMs, the dealers, the aftermarket. We figured it out and we saved ourselves from it, but it took a long time. And then you take the recessions hitting simultaneously with the CPSC taking away half of our market. Our industry damn near died right then and there. And it took until the 90s before you met the nicest people on a Honda and discovered today's motorcycling and Malcolm Forbes getting people to go buy Harleys to ride with him and Liz Taylor and that sort of thing. It took forever for us to clean up our image, figure out a way to work within it. And then we went on a 13-year run of double-digit growth of unit sales. And it was freaking awesome. It was anybody with a pulse could make a living in the industry. We were all fat and happy again.
Thanks a lot.
And then as soon as we crashed and burned, with the 08 crash,
08, 09,
we had to learn it all over. We forgot how to sell. We forgot what made our industry great. We were just there taking a paycheck, and now we're building back up. And then bang, COVID, and it happens again. And now we've got Harley's problems. We got KTM coming out of its bankruptcy. Over the weekend, Dainese discovered that they were 300 million euro in debt,
I
and
know, that's crazy.
they collapsed. So for every time that we figure it out as an industry, we get another set of setbacks, but we do keep coming back. And
What
then
do you guys? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ron.
on a market level, if you want a whole deep dive into it, talk to Eric Anderson. He's got the pipeline as to how all of this stuff works, and he also explains the aftermarket is the aftermarket. We lag the OEM innovations and the new products by 3 to 5 months, 3 to 5 years, whatever it is. But there was this perfect sine wave. Every time that we'd have a spike in aftermarket goodies and stuff going up, especially for me when I'm working on the show side, we would have a great dealer expo because we would have 300, 400, 500 exhibitors at that show. We would have 20,000 industry personnel come to Cincinnati and Indianapolis. It was freaking awesome. And again, because I'm not taking any credit for that, I just had a pulse. I was the right guy to sit in the seat and collect a paycheck and watch.
And now, what kind of numbers are they doing at those shows?
We don't have those shows anymore. The IMS, our consumer arm, was pulled, and the Dealer Expo ended in 2015. So AIM is a hybrid of that. We're trying to get back up there. Its numbers are actually they're getting better. It's an improvement. AIM Expo moves from Vegas back into Anaheim for 2026, tied in with Supercross. We could have a great show. We could have another one of these 13-year runs if we put our heads together and we rally as an industry. But it's nothing new under the sun. If you forget your history, you're destined to relive it. And I think that a lot of people in this industry maybe are going to have to relearn some of these hard lessons that we went through in the 80s and again in the early 2000s.
What do you guys think if you dropped like a new rider or you know, a young exec into the industry 30, 40 years ago? What would blow their mind the most, you think?
I mean, how inefficient it was.
And well, how much simpler it was. I mean, from a marketing standpoint, you know, I had a budget, you know, for marketing. Well, it was related to how many ads I was going to buy from the magazines, you know, what events we were going to do, including a dealer meeting, which was a big part of the year, the annual dealer meeting, and then, you know, your racing activities. And that was it, you know, that was pretty much it. Maybe dealer co-op, you had to put a budget together for dealer co-op. But there's 3 or 4 things you needed to look after. Nowadays, you still have to do some advertising, and you've got to take that into consideration. But between social media and influencers, all of these other things you've got going on, and the metrics that you want to drive around it. Back then, we just kind of went like this and said, are sales going up or down? You know, we'll spend more or less money, and that's been working, so we'll keep going that. These are our partners here. But I think what they would find more than anything else, and that's missing today, is this, which you see right here with the three of us. There was a familiarity and a relationship that with the relationships that were built and has lasted all of these years were real. You know, they were real relationships. They were business relationships. They were friendships. And those are the things that I don't see lacking today. Everybody's just out for themselves today. Me. You know, how many people looked at my post today? Oh my God, a lot of people looked at my post today. All of these other things that are just or completely trivial. Back then, it was much more organic and much more authentic, I think, much more, you know, much more respect for the differences and everything. And now it's not what have you done for me recently? It's what have you done? What are you going to do for me in 5 minutes? That's all I care about.
Yeah, it used to be very relationship driven, and now those relationships took years to develop. Relationships with a factory in Sweden or China or wherever the hell you're working with, you know, you had to build those relationships as well as the relationships with dealers and then relationships with end users. So as a national sales manager, and you know, in my case or in Scott's case, you're managing all of these relationships and making sure that they all stay positive. And nowadays, it's just turn and burn as fast as you can. And honestly, if somebody gets trapped in that relationship and they get screwed out of something, you just keep going no matter. You leave them behind in the trail. And, this goes back to riding too. I was riding with Scott, and I don't know, maybe it was the Nevada 200 pre-run or something with you, and you blew up a new Husky. The engine just was toast. And, it's like a lot of people would have just ridden right by that rider. And I thought, oh, no, that's Scott. I turned around and came back, and you had oil pouring out all over the ground. And it was a pre-run. It wasn't a competition. It wasn't a race. Well, hey, I got a tow rope. And I remember towing you out of a sand wash. You must have had your face sandblasted, but towed you, I don't know, 30 miles back to the truck or something. But nobody would stop and help a rider anymore. But back then, we always stopped and helped each other out. We had to. Baja especially. You see a downed rider in Baja, the race isn't worth it. You stop and help that guy.
Scott told us some crazy stories about that.
Yeah. A lot of that's gone now. It's all about me, me, me. You're right.
Robin, what about yourself? What do you think?
Well, the same thing, only in reverse. KTM had 3 brand new 200s. I had the limited edition Jack Binder. This was the upgrade or evolution of my bike. Sweet. Scott let me have one of those for the FMF Baja Mar ride. And I ended up crashing and blowing up my knee and leaving Scott's one of only 3 in the country. Malcolm got one, Scott got one, I got one. That's how limited these things were. And now it's sitting somewhere in Mexico. And I'm in a hospital in San Diego, and Scott's in the middle trying to find this one-off bike that I shouldn't have been on. I shouldn't have been riding out of the country or whatever. He goes into this little town, the Policia, who found me, the Federales, took it back, washed the bike, had it there waiting in the town square, and had a little fiesta because Scot Harden was coming to town to pick up the bike. So, that's cool. You can't make this kind of stuff up. But
it was in a little tiny podunk town. I had to track which town it was in and which village, I should say. It wasn't a town and everything. And then where it might be. And it wasn't here. It wasn't there. Well, it was over at the police station. But, yeah.
Well, what are you guys most hopeful about in the current state of motorcycling that you're seeing?
I'll start. As we grew up through the decades, there was always some kind of gateway product to the next generation, of motorcycling. Or I'll include UTVs. I'll include different categories of vehicles that now we've evolved this word motorcycle to now power sports. And, we work in the business in the wholesale side, and our audience for the 3 of us is generally dealers and retailers who are motor vehicle state licensed business operators. And, anytime a new product would come out, a 3-wheeler, we laughed at it. Until sales went like this. UTVs came out. We laughed at those till sales went like this and rescued the industry. Now the new product that we're kind of laughing at are these micro mobility things, which, some of them are just cheap Chinese scooters that are going to be sold B2C, and they'll skip the dealer and all the rest of that. And I think a lot of those will also have problems and be imploded, or they'll go to like Lime scooters and Bird scooters. They'll be left as trash on the sidewalk and end up in a disposal dump somewhere. But I think there's more interesting, I'll call them micro mobility vehicles that are coming. Stasic bicycles for children, for instance. It's like a DeWalt drill battery on the bottom and a pedalless bicycle, and kids now are picking up on these fast. And my 2 4-year-old grandsons are getting them this Christmas. They already have the balance bikes, but they're graduating to electric ones. And that, I think, is going to help the industry. They're kind of the mini bikes that we talked about earlier on in this podcast as a gateway drug to motorcycling, but they're quiet and there's no emissions. Mothers sort of aren't as intimidated because they're not loud, and the neighbors aren't calling saying, get that kid out of the cul-de-sac, it's too noisy. That kind of stuff's not happening. We still have to protect ourselves by sending the right messages and wearing protective clothing and always wear a helmet, etc. But I think a lot of these new products are going to help bring kids up in an environment where they will want to race when they get to their teen years, or they will want to own a motorcycle, dirt bike, or street bike later in life. What do you guys think? We need gateway drugs. We need some kind of stepping stones to get into motorcycling, and I think some of these electric vehicles are ways of doing it for the youth groups.
Yep.
They're maintenance free. They don't really break down. They're belt driven. The spokes don't loosen up, or the two-stroke cylinders don't seize like mine used to in the 70s. So there's a lot lower maintenance, and the modern generations don't know the difference between a screwdriver and a ratchet either. So
Wait, there's an app for that in there.
there's an app.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's on my phone somewhere. Change the
Yeah.
tire.
Robin,
I
what
will do
about
it for 'em.
what about you? What do you think's most? What are you most hopeful about with the current state?
Me?
Yeah.
Sky is not falling. According to DOT numbers and MIC's numbers to back it up and stuff, we've got more late model motorcycles registered for street use than we've ever had in history. We went from a traditional high of about 8 million. Now we're pushing 12, 13 million people that are riding that. That core group that Eric had mentioned earlier. Our industry never went away. We have slowly gotten better. We have gotten stronger. We've gotten more riders. We have a future. It's just not 30% year on year growth that all these guys predicted because of the COVID bubble. If
Right.
they had just taken 5, 10% growth and been happy with it and not weighted their dealers down with dead inventory and not done all of these things, but they all did it simultaneously. And these poor dealers who hadn't seen their factory rep for 12 and 24 months, and suddenly they get every bike they ever ordered delivered one day. And you're paying flooring on it, and yeah, you're expected to clean up the mess because you ordered these bikes. It's like, I ordered those bikes 2 years ago. What am I going to do now? And if you're a multi-line guy and that happens to you, yeah, it's tough for a dealer to get out from under that. It's tough for us.
Is that the reason what's going on with the dealerships now, Robin?
Yep,
Is that
that's it.
why a lot of dealerships are closing? They just
One of the contributing factors. There's so many factors that go into it. Just like an accident. Tell me what kind of store you got, and I'll tell you what kind of problems you're facing. But everybody's got a myriad of problems. But the bottom line is, or the top line is, we still got 12 million. And that doesn't include the side-by-side numbers because MIC never reports those. That's a viable industry out unto itself.
Big, yeah.
Powersports is bigger than that. And you add the EV portion of that, we're bigger than we've ever been.
Well, you're forgetting pre-owned units. The sales
pre-owned, every
driveway to
transaction.
driveway. So used bikes are 3 times bigger than new bike sales.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Scott,
You know,
on
I
your
think,
end.
I think as it says,
I was going to ask you. Sorry, before you start, I was going to ask you this question from 2 points. One is going to be as a Hall of Fame racer and what you're seeing in that part and what you're happy about in the current state, and then also from your corporate side.
Yeah, from the corporate side, too often we conflate numbers with success. The OEMs, are we selling more? Are we selling less? Oh my God, if we're not selling more, it's not successful. I mean, we're selling around 500,000 units a year right now in motorcycles in the United States right now. There was a time when we got that level, we were doing backflips because look where we got to. But then once you get over, you're thinking about success is now a bigger and bigger number. And I don't know. I just think that if we stop worried about the numbers and we worry about the process and the activity and just making sure that what we are selling, that those people are having fun, that those people are getting trained properly, that those people are being brought into groups to show them how to experience this with other people that are part of it. I was just at AMA Vintage Motorcycle Days, 40 to 50,000 people there. Gosh, it was just a mecca, everything motorcycling. I mean, just the sights, the sounds. It was like looking back in time, going back to the 60s and 50s and even, to see all of that stuff. It blows me away to see all that stuff and to see that, there's still that level of activity out there. So what I try to tell everybody, my main message and what I tried to do with my Plus One Rider initiative was just say, hey, you're a motorcyclist. Share your love with somebody else. Make sure that people that are around you that don't ride know about it, know how much fun you're having, and bring them along for the ride. that's if we just do that organically and we just keep, showing our passion for it and we just keep doing it, people can't help but be attracted to it because people are still looking. One of the good things about motorcycling and why I think it's been so stable is because, recessions come and go, discretionary income goes up and down. Not making as much. Times are tough. You start taking things out. Food, shelter. There's things that you have to have. But for a big number of people, power sports, motorcycles comes in a close third. It's right there. It's one of those things that you're going to hold on to and let a lot of other stuff go because you want to keep that part of your life going. So, and when I see with the Hall of Fame stuff, and just the people like I saw waiting to talk to Brad Lackey there at this thing this weekend and interact with him and the stories they had and their memories they had about it. I will say I wished our sport did a better job of honoring our past heroes and stuff. You go to a motocross race these days and kids don't even know who Jeremy McGrath was.
Yeah.
You start talking about your generation, Jeremy McGrath or Ricky Carmichael or Ryan Villapoto. They go, it wasn't Hayden Deegan or one of the Australian brothers is, or one of these other guys. It's just there's no respect for that. I'm a big fan and proponent of the Hall of Fames. They're the receptacles of our heritage, of our history, of our sport. I think it means something. I think these past stories mean something. They're part of the continuity that draws this whole thing out. It's the one thing that connects us to each other. It's this love for it, this passion for it. Of getting on a bike and changing your life one day by taking it out and racing it or doing something special with it. It changes people's lives, and I don't know, we have a great opportunity. There's still a lot more we could do. I don't know. I get frustrated sometimes when I see things that are simple, that we step over things. The problem that we have now is the new managers, the new people coming into our industry. I don't think they have any connection to that.
Agreed.
They are most of them don't. I think they're just there because this was the next job on the list. This might be interesting. I don't know.
Venture capital has poisoned our industry more than a few times.
There you go.
Yeah, and you see it. You see it even on things like LinkedIn, where you kind of, when you connect with somebody and you look at their past, a lot of them don't even come from that industry. They came from something else, and now they're in a very high position in this industry. And it's just like, if you don't really live it, how do you manage it?
Well, there's a lot of stories out there with people coming from that background, venture capitalists. They've taken very successful brands and companies and run them into the
arm's length lists. We have many lists.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, their focus is only on the bottom line, on the return on investment.
It's all corporate, man.
There's so much more to that. Life in general, there's so much more to that. I get it. You need to turn a profit, but my gosh, how much money do you have to make?
I think we all discussed it too on all the three separate podcasts, where we always used to think like walking into a motorcycle dealership was always just a completely different experience than walking into a car dealership. It was the car dealership, you got attacked like sharks and you were this bleeding steak in the water. And in the motorcycle dealerships, you walk in, man, and everybody's like, "What's up?" And you just walk around, check out all this cool stuff. You never felt pressure, but now it's completely different. And I see it more definitely from the Harley Davidson side. And I think it's one of the reasons they've struggled for so long is just they lost touch in reality of this industry.
A great sign on my boss's desk that I looked at for years. You guys know Dennis LeBonge, and the sign read, "If the concept is right, the money will come." And that's the problem now, that a lot of venture capitalists come to this industry and it's all about the money first and we'll get the concept right later.
Right.
It doesn't work. Not in a relationship-driven industry like ours.
Yeah.
That ended very poignantly, but started with a message of hope from the great Scot Harden that's got me ready to run through a wall, man. That was awesome.
I know. He's a beast.
So
Yes.
one of the coolest things about all three of you guys is that you have, as a collective, but also individually, you have so much experience from different facets and different sides of the industry. So this is a fun sort of another rapid fire question, sort of. I want to ask your advice to different types of people, and I'd love to start with just blunt one line piece of advice to a new rider. Eric, I'd love to start with you.
Get training. Period. Just get training, and the training will include protective clothing and all the rest. But as an expert witness,
It's
it's
important.
just amazing to me how untrained American riders are
Agreed.
versus European trained riders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Europe has a what's called a terrorist licensing system, where you ride around if you're a new rider with an L plate, the white plate that has a big red L on it. You're a learner, so people give you a little bit of extra space and give you a little bit of room for mistakes. But here in the U.S., a 17-year-old testosterone-driven teenager can go buy a 200 horsepower Hayabusa and kill himself within minutes,
Yeah.
and done it all legally with no training whatsoever. He
No.
gets an M-class license, he can buy a bike and ride it home, and that's just criminal in my mind. You go to
Excellent.
Japan,
Excellent.
terrorist licensing. You've got to have training, you got to have experience before you can move to the next size bike. We don't have that in America, and
Yeah.
I'm sad about that. We need better training regimes, and the
Agreed.
Motorcycle Safety Foundation is doing the best that they can. But we're also in a country where anyone can own a gun and open carry. We don't like to be overregulated, so it's not like the government's going to tell us you will take motorcycle training or you will not get your license. We don't like that kind of regulation in our country. So it's a real dichotomy that we have
Mm-hmm.
here of personal freedoms versus mandated training.
Mm-hmm.
We really want you to preserve your life, so we would hope you choose training like you would weapon training or gun training.
And it all goes back
Yeah.
to common sense laws.
Common sense.
Yep.
And now, Robin and I were talking, two states, Texas and I think Arkansas, have implemented now what's called the kind of legislation that's affecting motocross tracks, inherent danger liability.
Liability.
Uh,
Yep.
yeah, that so that you take on more of your own liability by choosing to ride a motocross track or motocross bike. You're not going to sue the landowner. I'm helping stand up a new association, Motocross Track Association, where but these new pieces of legislation are really helpful for motocross tracks to go get insurance. Insurance
Yep.
has been a real problem in our industry to get for competition use. But when you sign that liability waiver, when you go in to race a motocross machine, you need to take on some inherent risk. You're choosing to do that.
Right.
Um, as opposed to, well, I fell and somebody hit my head and now I'm a vegetable for the rest of my life and it's the landowner's fault. Well, no, it's not really. It's you chose to race, you chose to be in that situation, and it's more your responsibility in that
Mm-hmm.
case. So a lot of the states are starting to turn that up. So I'm happy to kind of see that, but at the same time, we don't have enough rider training in this country, period.
Hey, didn't
Mm-hmm.
California just ban something for young racers or something like that? Didn't that just come about?
Hmm.
Don't know
I heard
about that.
I read something that like they are dismissing or they don't want like young kids racing dirt bikes or anything like that. Or I don't know if
Yeah,
that's
I
true or
think I know
not.
what you're talking about. I don't know all the details on it though, but
I think California is the first to pass the law to basically that's gonna take away any young person who has any interest in motorcycles or any kind of racing out of the picture of
Hmm.
pursuing a passion. So that's kind of weird, man.
well, another reason to move to Idaho
Get
Or Nevada.
out. Get on Nevada, right?
or Nevada. Yeah.
Robin, what's your one-liner, blunt piece of advice for a new rider?
Same thing that Eric had mentioned, Motorcycle Safety Foundation and the MIC's Ride With Us program and all of that. Motorcycling is not for everybody. You need to ask yourself that before you get into it. Some people, you don't have the balance, the passion, whatever. It's not for you. Go on and become the pickleball champ, whatever is going to float your boat. But it's not for everybody.
You can learn that without getting injured. Scott,
Yeah.
do you have anything different?
Yeah, I would say that those guys are, just to add to that, find a group, find some friends, get together with other guys. Get out there and do something with a group. Find guys that you can hang out, or gals that you can hang out with. A lot of women in the sport, thank God now, finally.
Yeah, thank God. Yep.
Get out there and do it, and do it in a group thing. I've got another event I'm doing in September up here in Idaho. We're bringing 150 guys in from all over the U.S. I have people coming from Hawaii, New York, Ohio, Florida, Texas, Wisconsin, both the Dakotas, every Western state, all coming in to ride and hang out and just sharing our love for it. And while we're riding, that's the big part of it. But once we get done riding, we're bench racing. I've got Bob Hanna and Kevin Schwantz coming in to lead the bench racing sessions.
Nice.
My God. You're going to sit down and hear bench racing stories from Bob Hanna and Kevin Schwantz?
I'll bring my earplugs.
I mean, two guys with no filters. I can't wait. And I can tell you that, and I've seen it over and over and over again, when people leave that and after experiencing that, they're changed. Their love for our sport is goes up a magnitude of scale. It's hard to measure, because they're there with others. We're sharing it. It's the common bond that we have. And to be able to do that in a group, I'm a big, big fan of that. I encourage anybody that's riding, to go out and do it with others.
And that's a group of any size. I mean, it can be 3 guys or 300. Doesn't matter. Yeah, 2 guys. Just go with somebody else. You just learn so much from each other.
That's right.
Yep.
And it's just, it's like a brotherhood.
Absolutely.
Or sisterhood.
Next one is a new dealership owner. Robin, would you like to take the floor with that one?
One piece of
word?
advice.
Don't.
Let
it shake out first. If you're really persistent on it, you need to have the right motivation, and it needs to be that sense of camaraderie and the sense of passion for the product, because this is not going to make you $1 million. It takes 5 million to make your first million, is a formula that Eric learned with Scorpion. It doesn't happen easy. It doesn't happen overnight. And just because you got a Harley franchise, well, guess who failed for you to pick up that franchise? So you really need to check yourself at the door before you become a franchise motorcycle dealer.
Nice. Solid advice.
Yeah.
Scott, Eric, you guys have anything to add to that?
I might do it without the OEMs. Don't be franchised. Just be a pre-owned dealer and service and accessories. That's where the money is. And there are an increasingly number of retailers out there that, like our friend Mark Peterson in Texas, who runs, Dallas Superbikes. He doesn't deal with new motorcycles. He sells only used and pre-owned motorcycles, then accessories and service. And that's where the margins are.
There's 600 cycle gear stores out there that don't sell new units or used units.
Yeah.
So
I was one of them for 21 years.
Yeah. Well, and that's where the money is. Your margins are a lot higher than they are with a Polaris Razor at 6%, or the motorcycles and the UTVs, the OEMs have gradually squeezed those margins. There's extra fees since COVID. Some have been relieved, some have been removed, some haven't. But the margin on new units has been smaller and smaller and smaller. And as Robin and Scott know too, the National Powersport auction business in our industry that auctions off these pre-owned bikes and trade-ins from dealers is thriving. And the value of those used bikes that are tracked by the NADA, the little blue books that value your used motorcycles, those values are going up. As new unit sales go down, oftentimes the pre-owned unit sales go up. And that's where the money is. It's not So if you are to become a motorcycle dealer, do it with a pre-owned and accessory service side of things.
Good advice.
Yeah, that's really great advice, Eric. And I work with dealers every day, and I would say the same thing. You've got to be in it for the right reason. You have to understand what you're getting yourself into. You have to understand everything from a business perspective, from the hard side, but also from the soft side. You have to understand all that, people, how to deal with people, not only the customers, but your staff and everything. I would, you need to think long and hard about it before you get into it at this point.
Yeah, and I don't like the idea of having an OEM tell me how many I have to sell next year. And if you've got 2 or 3
Right.
of those, that's a tough deal. You've got to take this inventory. There's a gun to your head, or you're going to lose the franchise. It's like, I just don't want to be in that situation in the first place. I want to be in control of my own destiny, not just a retail cog in your giant machine of wheels. I'm just not interested. So the pre-owned market is, I think, where you really got to go.
Nice.
Now,
All right, last one is a gear or apparel startup. What advice would you have?
Would
for
you
that?
do it? Well, e-commerce is really tough in that area now, and a lot of it's dominated by that. And if it doesn't fit, you can ship it back, kind of thing. Fitting and sizing charts are a lot better now, but boy, trying to buy a helmet mail order is still a tough gig. It's got to fit absolutely correctly, and I think one of my experiences, not only being an MSF instructor, but now being an expert witness, is that people still buy helmets that are too big for their heads. And that's got to stop. That's got to really stop. You've got to be careful about that. And you can't do that by a mail order very easily. So, if you're becoming a retailer in the apparel business, is that what your question was? A gear dealer?
Gear or apparel, yeah.
or starting an apparel line or gear line, an aftermarket
Yep.
line of products.
Yeah.
As a retailer or as a
I mean, I guess
manufacturer?
it can cover the whole umbrella. It can be either selling stuff for or coming in as a new
Yeah.
apparel company.
Brand. Yeah.
Well, when I started Scorpion, hell, that was 2004. The guy who really wanted me to sell his helmets uh, asked me, how many helmet companies in America are there? This is 2004. 41 helmet companies in America. And that was back then. Like, why do we need another one?
Yeah.
That was my question. So my answer to him is, well, I might consider it if you give me 3 unique selling propositions. They don't have to be patents. They can be trademarked, and I'll make them look like patents. And that was the route we took. We had that no fog face shield. We had quick wicking moisture absorbing liners, and we had a toolless face shield removal system. And we just hammered the marketing on those 3 unique selling propositions. Plus, we had good styling and good graphics too, but you have to have that anyway. And then we brought in apparel. As Scott said, it was good fitting. It had great techniques on it. By the way, Bjorn Gericke designed that stuff. That's Hein Gericke's
really?
son. Hein Gericke's
That's right.
son.
That's right. That's right.
Bjorn's designed a lot of that for us. Anyway, but it's a super competitive market, to answer your question. I'm just sort of glad I'm out of it and my hair's no longer on fire.
Hey, guys, before you continue, Eric, I want to ask you one quick question, and this might be good for people who have been looking into helmets, things of that nature, with your expertise. Why is there such a dramatic difference in prices from, like, some companies are charging $1,500 for helmets, some companies are charging $800 for helmets, some companies are charging $300 for helmet. I mean, they're all DOT approved. What separates those that are charging $1,500 to $1,800 to the ones that are charging $300?
Well, probably what you and most customers don't realize is that there's 2 kinds of external shells of helmets. There are polycarbonate helmets that are molded very quickly and very efficiently by injection molding. They're plastic versus the more expensive and laborious laminated helmet shells, which are made out of fiberglass or Kevlar or composites. No, I beg to differ, because they have not kept up on rotational acceleration mitigation.
Oh, okay.
With the rye. They
you would know more.
The quality of their laminated shells are the best, Scott. You are correct. And I won't get into all the technical details of an inflatable bag and heated molds. If you build a Kevlar shell, Kevlar is restricted worldwide by shipping because it's used in munitions and bomb making. So getting what's called pre-preg, that's the Kevlar that's pre-impregnated with the resin. and it's refrigerated wherever it's shipped. And when you heat it up in a mold, it hardens and it comes out as the shell of a of a helmet. But then you got to cool that mold down with water cooling. It gets expensive when you go to the laminate route. Laminates are lighter weight than polycarbonate. So that's the big difference between the cheaper helmets and the more expensive ones. They're all DOT and ECE approved. So you get to choose which technology you want.
Gotcha. Thank you for explaining that.
But it goes back to the old bell thing. You got a $10 head, get yourself a $10 helmet.
I love that sign. That was one of the best marketing lines ever. Yeah, we sold a lot of premium helmets back in those days.
My son just developed a new helmet for Climb. My son develops all the products for Climb now, the motorcycle stuff.
Nice. That's a great company.
They're Kevlar. They're all carbon Kevlar.
They're all carbon Kevlar.
5 years. 5 years in development, Eric.
Yeah.
Wow.
5 years on that new helmet. It is nice. It is a very nice helmet.
Yeah.
I've got to say, there's
Robin,
a lot
what do
of
you
features.
think? With that? No, Robin. What do you think far as coming from the dealer side?
It's a little bit different from the dealer side because of two-step distribution. Most dealers are not dealing directly with the manufacturer. Shoei's going through Helmet House. HJC, the largest helmet company in the world, is going through Helmet House. So now there's other things that affect your marketing and your price, and also what you have access to because you're in working with that distributor. So what's your line? If you're a Parts Unlimited store, then you're going to be carrying their Icon helmets and their other stuff as your entry level, and then you'll go up and stuff. And it was a big deal when Arai moved its distribution from one distributor who's no longer with us to another distributor. That sent shockwaves throughout that segment of the market. So that's not the difference between a $300 and a $1,300 helmet, but that's certainly a few bucks in between there. Again, it's all these things add up. The dealer, you make good money on a helmet or apparel, closer to Keystone than you make when you're trying to be squeezed by your OEMs and get 6 to 10% on a motorcycle. But at the end of the day, you have to be an astute businessman. You got to figure that out. And if you're Eric, you got 3 unique selling propositions. You got
and dealer direct. We did go
and
dealer direct.
That was Scorpion's success, was they were dealer direct, and they had a rep force that came in there and coached your team up, sold the helmets to your customers for you while they were there, did everything there was to support it. And then Eric supported with the merchandising and the racing program, bringing in Matt Mladen, who was number 1 in AMA Superbike at the time, all of that sort of thing.
Scot Harden.
Yeah, that stuff doesn't happen free or cheap easier. So the helmet manufacturers, how much do you do that? If you don't go racing, you don't do anything, you just produce helmets and you don't market them at all, well, yeah, you can scale a few bucks off of that, but what's the dealer going to do to make that stand out from an Arai that's on the shelf and it's been around since Mr. Arai first swapped his straw boater hat for a motorcycle helmet, and there's pictures of him standing on the Japanese equivalent of a Harley Davidson seat wearing a straw boater. That's the helmet message from the most protective helmet company out there, according to Scott. So there's more than one way to skin a cat, but none of them are cheap.
Gotcha. Man, that's awesome, man, to get feedback from you guys on that stuff. So we're going to hit the final stages of this podcast and basically looking back with gratitude. What are you guys most grateful for from your journey and from each other?
The people, the dealers are the greatest people in the world. The industry people are the greatest people, and we earned it, but we're also welcoming. It's not like you have to get your 4-year degree to fit in. You don't have to even win the car. You can find your place and you can find your people, and there's going to be a supportive and great community of like-minded individuals, whatever your personal passion is.
And what about from each other?
We picked each other. We've been friends. I think that's our strength, is that we picked our mentors and we picked our friends very selectively. And that's what got us to where we are now. We're also team managers. I mean, coaches, instructors, we give back. And, Robin's been giving back his whole life with Dealernews, which is basically a not-for-profit association. Right. I started with not-for-profit working for the MIC and the MSF, and Scott, was working for peanuts so he could race. I'm sure that he wasn't getting paid a lot, but he had an awesome position of being the national sales manager and race every weekend.
Well, and riding schools and events and advocacy programs like Plus One Rider and land use issues and all the other stuff that I've given back. A third of my time right now is pro bono. I give a third of my time back to the sport, just on different projects and stuff that I don't expect any return on. I just do it because I'm obligated to do it. I have to do it. And I would just say that the people are the most important thing. Again, I just got back from AMA BMD, and for a kid growing up in Vegas reading in magazines about heroes like Brad Lackey and Brock Glover and all these guys that were just heroes to me that I worshiped growing up, to be able to sit down and have dinner with them and call them my friend and hear the stories that were going on. Tell me about this. I saw a YouTube video of the Interam at Puyallup in 1972, and you were top American on the Kawasaki. How was that? That was the first Kawasaki ever made. And to hear the story about dirt bike, and he tells me the story about it. The better story was that he rode a CZ the same day in the 250 class because they didn't make a CZ. And the even better story is that he won
250
championship on it that year. And he had written a clause in his contract that said, if I win the championship, I have the option of either returning to America or going to Europe. And after the event, they had a big party, and they go, okay, let's make our plans for Daytona and this and that and this and that. And the Japanese were over the moon. And Brad comes back and says, oh, no, we're not going to that. I'm going to Europe. And they go, what do you mean? What do you mean? Well, we're coming back and defending the championships. And says, Brad, no, my dream's in Europe. And by the way, read the contract. It says we can do this or I can do this. And the Kawasaki people were bummed to death.
That's amazing.
But yet that's got him started in Europe, and that led to a world championship. And to hear that from the guy that did it and sacrificed for 10 years for our country, and I don't know. It doesn't get any better than that.
That's cool.
It's incredible. Hey, if the three of you guys had to pick a moment shared between each of you to toast to, what would it be?
Oh, there's so many. How do you pick one?
I'm gonna say what Robin's doing right now. I would toast to Dealernews.
Oh, that's cool.
And everything that they're doing, pulling our industry together right now, and the work that Robin's doing. I'd have a toast to that. I mean, it's something from our past and our not distant past and our not so in the past and even now in the future. Robin's doing a great job with that. Really good job with that.
More than just Dealernews too. And Robin and I helped stand up the new association for dealers, the National Powersport Dealer Association, and I'll toast to those guys. The automotive industry has had a dealer association for 100 years. We've never had one until 3-4 years ago. And during COVID, there wasn't a whole lot else to do. I learned how to work Zoom meetings, and 52 Zoom meetings later, Robin, myself, and Bob Altoff, who also happens to own Dealernews and at the time 3 Harley Davidson dealerships in Ohio, stood up the vision, the mission statement, the bylaws of the National Powersport Dealer Association, and as a result, now we're entering our second big event, our national meeting called Connect in Ohio. Been out there 3 years advocating for motorcycle dealers and helping them from a statistical standpoint, as well as being a legislative watchdog for them and helping to organize now state dealer associations. And Robin's part of that too. So a toast in NPDA and Dealernews. Robin, you're next.
Well, I would toast you guys for what you do, but I would also be remiss taking it back full circle. It's Larry Hester and it's Don Brown and it's the guys that created the modern motorcycle industry as we know it, and it's Rod Bush for what he did for us, and it's all of those seminal figures that came together to make this industry what it is. We went from the outlaws and the disenfranchised World War II veterans looking for some way, and then the Lee Marvins and the Wild Ones with Marlon Brando, to a legitimate industry, but still passion driven.
Skip Lope, Van Leeuwen's, the Paul,
Yeah.
the Flanders, all of these guys that went out and created these things. Yeah, I hear you.
It's because for us as the people who do love this industry, we see it from a different perspective, right? You know, I've been a small business owner, Ben's a small business owner, all this stuff. And we have our listeners who either love motorcycles or are part of this industry one way or another. To be able to spend these last couple of hours with the three of you and really see what it means. I mean, what you guys show us is that everything that we feel about being on the bike, right? You're on the bike, you love it, man, and you feel like you're in the greatest place on earth. And then listen to you guys talk, all coming from different aspects of the industry, but yet almost the same. And the love and the passion you guys share between each other, man. It's been an absolute honor. Thank you for joining us on this 100th podcast with the One Gang Worldwide. And man, we love you guys, and we want nothing more than to have you on our 200th show. So stay healthy and keep spreading the word of this beautiful industry that we're in.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having us. We enjoy
Thank you, guys.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having us on. Keep up the good work. And call me up when you get to show number 200.
All right,
Yes,
you got
sir,
it.
Scott. We appreciate you guys. We lost Robin. It looks like his screen probably got disconnected, but I'm sure we'll catch up with him. Thank you guys so much from the bottom of our hearts. This has been
Stay healthy,
awesome.
guys,
You guys are
and
legends. Take care.
Take care.